New digital scan of the Titanic has offered an unprecedented insight into the ship's final moments. A detailed three-dimensional reconstruction of the wreck reveals engineers worked to keep the lights on even as the vessel sank.
Everyone thinks the Titanic is just a rusting wreck. They are wrong. A deep-sea submersible mission to the bridge just changed everything. As they arrived, their instruments spiked, hit by a massive energy pulse. But this energy was just a clue. It led them to something else. A faint tapping sound and an impossible hole torn out from within the ship. A discovery so disturbing the footage has been locked away. We are about to reveal what they found and the wild theories about the new unseen inhabitant of the Titanic. The crushing black. The North Atlantic is a cold, angry place. On the surface, waves as tall as buildings chop and swell, and the wind screams. It's a world of chaos and noise. But 2.5 miles down, there is nothing. There is no sound. There is no light. There is no warmth. There is only a crushing, absolute blackness, colder than a refrigerator. This is the abyssal plain, and this is the tomb of the RMS Titanic. For over 100 years, the great ship has rested here, split in two, a ghost of iron and rust. Everyone's obsessed with the story of how it sank. But the crazy part is, the real story, the one that's unfolding right now, is 1,000 times stranger. A new mission was launched to find out. This wasn't just another tourist dive, this was the Odyssey, a state-of-the-art submersible, a 22-foot sphere of reinforced titanium 5 inches thick. It was built for one reason, to withstand pressure that would flatten a military tank like a soda can. Its mission was simple: create a perfect 3D map of the entire wreck site, not just the outside, but the inside. It was equipped with powerful new sonar that could, in theory, see through the walls. And it was going to start with the most famous spot of all, the bridge. The descent began. The Odyssey slipped beneath the waves, leaving the world of light and air behind. Inside, the 3-person crew was silent, their faces lit only by the green glow of the control panels. You see, what most people don't realize is the sheer weight of the ocean. It's not like swimming in a pool. The pilot of the Odyssey was not just diving, he was falling into the single most hostile environment on our planet. At 1,000 feet, the world outside the tiny 9-inch thick viewport was a deep sapphire blue. At 3,000 feet, it was a dark, inky twilight. By the time they passed 1 mile down, all light from the sun was gone. Gone forever. They were in a realm of absolute blackness, a place more alien and less explored than the dark side of the moon. And get this, the pressure here is almost 6,000 pounds per square inch. Imagine having 50 full-size jumbo jets stacked on top of your thumbnail. To put it lightly, a single tiny flaw in the hull, a crack the width of a human hair, would mean the end. The sub wouldn't just leak, it would implode. The crew would be turned to mist in less than a millisecond before their own brains could even register that something was wrong. The Odyssey continued its slow 2-hour fall. The temperature outside was a bone-chilling 34 degrees Fahrenheit, just above freezing. The only sounds were the hum of the CO2 scrubbers and the calm rhythmic ping of the sonar mapping the endless emptiness. But then, about an hour and a half into the dive, something new appeared on the acoustic sensor. It was faint. A technician, a man who had spent years listening to the ocean, leaned forward, tapping his headset. "You guys hearing that?" he asked. The pilot listened. Tap, tap, tap. It was a noise. But it wasn't a whale. Whale calls are long and low. This was sharp. It wasn't geology. A shifting seafloor is a rumble, not a tap. This was metallic. "That's weird," the pilot said. The technician isolated the sound, filtering out the sub's own humming. Tap, 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 tap. It had a pattern. It was not random. The crew looked at each other, the blood draining from their faces. Yeah, about that. They were still thousands of feet above the sea floor, in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There should be nothing out here but water, mud, and microscopic plankton. The mission commander radioed the surface ship, more than 2 miles above them. Surface, this is Odyssey. We're picking up a faint rhythmic acoustic. Sounds like metal on metal. Can you confirm? The line was silent for a moment as the surface team checked their own powerful hydrophones. The reply came back, crackling with static. Negative, Odyssey. We have no other contacts in your area. Must be a ghost in your system, a harmonic from your own machinery, but the crew inside the sub knew it wasn't a ghost in the system. The sound was outside. The sensors were clear. It was real. And get this. The direction finder showed it was coming from directly below them, from the exact coordinates where the world's most famous graveyard lay waiting. They were descending toward a wreck, but it sounded like someone, or something, was still banging on the walls. The Odyssey was no longer just a mapping mission, it was an investigation. The crew was on edge. They were intruders and they had just heard the doorbell. The tapping was only the beginning. The anomaly at the helm. After 2.5 agonizingly slow hours, the Odyssey's main sonar finally painted a picture on the screen. A massive, jagged shadow rising from the mud. They had arrived. Lights on, the pilot ordered. 2 beams of pure white light, brighter than stadium lights, sliced through the eternal dark, and there it was. The bow of the RMS Titanic. It appeared out of the gloom like a phantom, its giant rusted hull pointing toward the surface it hadn't seen in over 100 years. It was covered in rusticles, long reddish-brown icicles of bacteria that are literally eating the ship alive. Scientists estimate they consume hundreds of pounds of iron every single day. The ship is melting. It was an awful, haunting, and beautiful sight. The Odyssey began its survey. The sub, itself the size of a small U-Haul truck, glided over the forecastle deck, past the silent, massive anchor chains. Each link weighs over 170 pounds. The scale is just hard to get your head around. Their first target was the bridge. This was the command center. This is where Captain Smith and his officers stood, helpless, as the ship met its fate. The sub moved carefully, its robotic arms folded. The wreck is fragile. A wrong move, a bump from the sub's thrusters, could bring a section of the decaying decking crashing down. They passed the gaping black hole where the grand staircase once stood, now just a void of shadow leading down into the ship's guts. They moved up toward the very front of the boat deck. The bridge itself is mostly gone. The wooden wheelhouse where the ship's wheel was blown away in the sinking. All that remains is the raised metal platform and the iconic bronze telemotor, the stand that the wheel was attached to. It stands alone, like a tombstone on the deck. The Odyssey hovered, its lights flooding the ruined command center. The crew was silent, a moment of respect for the 1,500 souls lost here. The rhythmic tapping sound was still there, faint on the sensors, but they tried to ignore it. They were here to scan. The pilot activated the high-resolution sonar array. This new tech was supposed to send pulses into the metal, mapping the ship's internal structure. Okay, starting the bridge scan now. Full power to the array. The moment he hit the switch, it happened. Screech! A blast of white noise so loud it physically hurt filled their headsets. Every single screen on the console flashed bright red. "What is that?" the technician yelled, ripping his headset off. "Shut it down!" "Shut it down." "I'm trying," the pilot yelled back, his hands flying across the console. "It's not responding." The Odyssey's main sonar screen, which should have been painting a perfect 3D image, was just a sheet of blinding white static. The acoustic sensors were screaming, overloaded, and the magnetometer, the instrument that measures magnetic fields, it was spinning wildly, completely off the charts. "It's an energy spike. A massive one," the technician said. It's coming from right here, from the bridge. It's all around us." The crew was in full-blown panic. Was the sub breaking? Was the hull collapsing from the pressure? But all life support and pressure readings were green. This was external. It was as if they had hit an invisible electric wall. A burst of energy, stronger than anything they had ever recorded in the deep ocean, was erupting from the Titanic's bridge. It was like a silent scream. "Back us off." "Back us off now," the pilot commanded, overriding the system. He fired the reverse thrusters, and the Odyssey shot backward, away from the bridge, its light still pointing at the telemotor. As they moved back about 50 feet, the noise stopped. Just like that. It was gone. The screen snapped back to normal. The sensors were clear. The alarms went silent. There was dead silence in the sub. What was that?" the commander whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't know," the technician said, his hands trembling. "It was like a pulse, an electromagnetic pulse. But that's impossible. There's no power down here. The ship is dead." They sat in the darkness, their hearts pounding. The Odyssey had just been shouted at by the Titanic. They looked at the bridge, now floating silently in their lights. It was just dead, rusted metal. But here's the catch. The instruments were now clear, all except one, the acoustic sensor. Tap, tap, tap. The tapping sound was still there, and the crazy part is, it wasn't coming from the bridge. The instruments told them the tapping was coming from further back, from deep inside the wreck, from the officers' quarters. The spike on the bridge was a dead end, a warning. IT was a keep out sign. But this tapping, this was an invitation. "Forget the bridge," the commander said, his voice low. "Find that tapping." They were being led somewhere else, somewhere far, far worse. The wreck's new wound. The Odyssey left the bow section, its crew deeply unsettled. The energy spike had fried 2 of their external sensors. This was no joke. They were now following a sound. The sub moved along the starboard side of the boat deck. The tapping was getting louder. Clang, clang, clang. The sensors pointed to a specific area, the officers' quarters. This section is right behind the bridge. It's where the ship's ranking officers, like First Officer Murdoch and Second Officer Lightoller, had their cabins. These were the men who were on duty, who saw the iceberg, who tried to save the ship. This part of the wreck is badly damaged. The decks have started to pancake on top of each other, but many of the interior walls are still there. The submersible, as big as it was, couldn't get close. "I can't fit," the pilot said. "The superstructure is too tight. If we get snagged on a piece of rebar, we're done. We'll never get free." The commander nodded. "We're going in, but we're not risking the Odyssey. Deploy Argus." Argus was their secret weapon. It was a smaller, remote-controlled drone about the size of a microwave. It was attached to the Odyssey by a 2,000-foot fiber optic cable, and it was built for one reason: to go inside the wreck. "Deploying Argus," the technician said. A small bay door opened on the Odyssey, and the Argus drone floated out, its small, powerful lights piercing the black. The technician took the controls. The crew watched on the main high-definition monitor. It was like playing the world's most terrifying video game. Argus flew past the ghostly, empty davits where lifeboats once hung. It slipped through a large, collapsed hole in the outer wall and was now inside the RMS Titanic. The screen showed a world of mud and impossible decay. Rusticles hung from the ceiling like rotten chandeliers, some of them 6 or 7 feet long. The floor was a thick soup of silt that had rained down for over 100 years. The drone's lights revealed haunting, personal things. A single leather boot sitting upright in the mud, perfectly preserved by the cold and the tannic acids. An unbroken champagne bottle, still full, its cork still in place. Remnants of a life that ended in ice. The tapping was loud now. Clang, clang, clang. It was coming from just ahead. The sound was so clear it was as if someone was in the next room, banging on the wall with a hammer. Argus turned a corner into the main hallway of the officers' quarters. And then they saw it. The crew in the Odyssey fell silent. "What am I looking at?" the pilot whispered. On an interior wall separating 2 cabins, there was a hole. It was a jagged, ugly tear in the steel about 3 feet wide. So here's the deal. A hole isn't weird. The whole ship is full of holes. It's a 100-year-old wreck, but this one was different. The technician zoomed the camera in. The steel, it was peeled back. The sharp, torn edges were bent outward into the hallway where the drone was. This single detail changes everything. You see, when the Titanic sank, it was an implosion event. The pressure of the ocean, all 6,000 pounds of it, crushed the ship. Any air trapped inside compartments would have caused them to violently collapse inward. Any damage from the sinking would have bent the metal in, not out. This hole was punched from the inside of the cabin. "That's impossible," the commander said flatly. "That breaks physics. That can't happen." They looked closer. The technician brought the drone's light right up to the edge. The metal around the tear was brighter. It had less rust, less marine growth than the steel right next to it. This looked recent. "Could it be salvage?" the pilot asked. "Did someone come down here with a bomb?" "No," the commander shot back. "Absolutely not. To get a sub in here without anyone knowing, this area is monitored. And why? There's nothing in that cabin but a bed and a desk. You wouldn't use explosives to do this. This wasn't a blast. This was torn." The team stared at the monitor, their minds racing. What could be inside a sealed room on the Titanic? A room sealed for over 100 years that could punch its way out through a solid steel wall? It made no sense. A buildup of gas from decay? No. The science doesn't support that. It wouldn't have the focused force to tear quarter-inch steel plate. And get this, the tapping, clang, 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 was coming from inside that dark new hole. It was as if something was in there banging on the next wall, trying to get further into the ship. The Argus drone, its lights pointing into the blackness of the tear, slowly moved forward, and then, as it got to the edge of the hole, the tapping stopped. Complete, sudden silence. The silence was 1,000 times worse than the noise, the unseen organism. The crew of the Odyssey held their breath. For a full agonizing minute, there was no sound but the faint, high-pitched hum of the drone's electric thrusters. The hammering was gone. "Did it stop?" the pilot asked, his voice cracking. "Shh," the commander said. "Don't move, Argus." They were all staring at the monitor, at the jagged black hole in the steel. The Argus drone hovered, its high-definition camera peering into an abyss within an abyss. Whatever was in there, it knew they were here. It had heard the drone. "Okay, Argus," the technician said, his voice barely a whisper. "Let's see what's in there. Easy, easy." He gently pushed the joystick and the drone inched forward, crossing the threshold of the torn metal. Its lights beamed into the darkness of the sealed cabin. The room was thick with mud and silt almost up to the drone's waist. They could see the outline of a rusted bed frame, just a skeleton of metal. A small desk, fallen on its side, its drawers long since rotted away. Just wreckage. "See? Nothing," the pilot said, the relief in his voice obvious. "It's just the ship settling. The tapping must be, I don't know, a piece of metal expanding and contracting." "Steel doesn't expand at 34 degrees Fahrenheit, the commander said, his eyes glued to the screen. "Stay focused. Pan the room. Slowly." The technician panned the drone's camera slowly, from left to right. Mud, rust, a broken piece of porcelain from a wash basin, and then... "Wait, go back," the commander said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Go back to the left." The technician panned the camera back. "What? I don't see anything. It's just mud." "There, in the corner by the leg of the bed frame." The technician zoomed the camera in. At first, it just looked like more debris, a pile of something, but it was different. It wasn't red with rust, it wasn't brown with silt. It was pale, almost white, and it looked smooth. "What is that?" the pilot asked. "Is that a fungus, a bacterial colony?" "I don't know," the technician said, pushing the drone a few inches closer. The Argus was now only about 4 feet away from it. The thing was about the size of a dinner plate. It was irregular in shape, like a blob, but it had no hard edges. It looked soft, almost gelatinous. "Is that biological?" the pilot whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." And then, for just a fraction of a second, it happened. The thing moved. It wasn't a drift. It wasn't a shift from the drone's thruster wash. It contracted. It pulled back on itself, away from the light, with a speed that was horrifying and unnatural. It vanished, burrowing down into the thick mud on the floor. The crew screamed. "What was that? What was that?" the pilot shouted, recoiling in his seat. "Get Argus out! Get it out now! Back, back!" the commander yelled. The technician jammed the joystick and the drone shot backward out of the hole and back into the hallway. He spun it around and flew it as fast as he could back toward the Odyssey. The crew watched the monitor, half expecting to see that thing come squeezing out of the hole, chasing them. But nothing followed. They docked Argus back in the submersible, the sound of the metal clamps sealing the bay door echoing like a gunshot in the tiny cabin. The three men sat in silence for a long time. Their hearts were pounding so hard they could feel it in their throats. "Replay the footage," the commander said, his voice hoarse. The technician brought the last 30 seconds of footage up on the main screen. They watched it again. The dark room, the pale, smooth object, and the quick, deliberate living movement. It was real. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't debris. It was something. Something that was alive, something that had been living inside a sealed room of the Titanic, in total darkness, in crushing pressure, for God knows how long. That's what made the hole, the pilot said. It punched its way out. And the tapping, the technician added, that was it, it was digging. And the spike on the bridge, the commander concluded. That was the warning, a territorial display, like an animal roaring, telling us to stay away from its nest. The Odyssey mission was over. "Take us up," the commander said. "Now, get us out of here." The pilot fired the vertical thrusters and the Odyssey began its long 2.5-hour ascent, rising from the graveyard. But the crew knew the truth, a truth that would change marine biology forever. The Titanic is not a tomb, it's an incubator. But what they found would soon be buried in secrecy and wild theories. What really lives in the dark. The Odyssey's ascent to the surface was tense. When it finally breached the churning waves of the Atlantic, the crew was met by a team of scrambled scientists and, reportedly, security officials. The footage was immediately taken. The data was classified. The official report from that mission has never been released. The breathtaking 8K footage of the hole in the pale shape, locked away, buried. So here's the deal. Why the secrecy? The official story, leaked through back channels, is that the anomaly was inconclusive. They say it was probably just a rare geological event or a new type of bacterial colony that looked like it moved. Yeah, about that, that's a lie. The real reason the footage is buried is that the implications are too terrifying and in some cases too wild to be believed. People watching this are looking for a mystery. Maybe they think it's a ghost, the spirit of Captain Smith guarding his bridge. But the truth is far more tangible and far, far scarier. Let's talk down to Earth for a minute. The most shocking fact is that humanity knows more about the surface of Mars and the dark side of the Moon than we do about our own ocean floor. Over 80% of our ocean is unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. We have better, more detailed maps of the Moon. We are flying helicopters on Mars, but we have barely dipped our toes into the abyss. We think of the deep sea as a barren, lifeless desert. But for decades, scientists have been proven wrong over and over. In the 1970s, they discovered hydrothermal vents, black smokers, miles down. These are volcanic chimneys on the ocean floor spewing out water hot enough to melt lead. The pressure is immense. There is no light, and yet what did they find? They found them covered in life. Creatures that look like aliens. Giant tube worms, 10 feet long with no mouth and no gut, surviving on pure chemicals. Blind white crabs and ghostly fish that thrive in a world that should, by all rights, be sterile. This is life, but not as we know it. So let's look at theory number 1, the logical nightmare. These creatures at the vents live on chemosynthesis. They eat chemicals, not sunlight. The RMS Titanic is a mountain of metal. For 100 years, it has been slowly dissolving, leaching iron and other minerals into the water. In fact, scientists have already discovered a brand new species of bacteria on the wreck. It's called Halomonas titanicae. It is a bacteria that eats iron. It is the cause of the rusticles. It is literally eating the ship alive. The Titanic isn't just a wreck, it's an ecosystem. Scientists have a name for this, a metal fall. It's just like a whale fall when a whale passes away and sinks. Its body provides a feast for the deep sea that can last for 50 years. The Titanic is a feast that has lasted over 100. What if it's not just bacteria that has evolved to feed on the ship? Are we missing a key detail? Did we really think that in 100 years in the most extreme environment on Earth, only bacteria would show up to the party? This theory says the pale shape is an undiscovered organism, a colossal deep-sea creature that has made the Titanic its home. Maybe it burrows through the metal, feeding on the iron-rich rust. The tapping was the sound of it breaking through the steel wall, and the spike on the bridge. Many deep-sea animals, like the electric eel, can produce electricity. What if a creature the size of a car living in a world of metal had evolved to create a powerful electrical charge as a defense mechanism? The Odyssey got too close, and it got zapped. That's the logical theory. But now it gets wild. Theory number 2, the bloop. Everyone's obsessed with the bloop. In 1997, hydrophones picked up a sound from the deep Pacific. It was an ultra-low frequency, extremely powerful blooping sound. It was heard by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. The crazy part is, the sound profile was biological. It sounded like an animal. But to make a sound that loud, the creature would have to be bigger than a blue whale. Bigger than any animal known to history. Scientists later said it was probably just an ice quake, but that's never been fully proven. What if it wasn't ice? What if there are things down there, true giants, moving in the dark that we have never, ever seen? This theory suggests the tapping wasn't digging, it was communication. It was a signal. And the spike on the bridge, that wasn't a defense, that was a call. The magnetometer spinning wildly suggests something magnetic. This leads to the wildest theory of all. Theory number 3, the USO. We've all heard of UFOs, but people in the Navy, the ones who spend their lives on the water, talk about USOs. Unidentified submerged objects, things that move underwater at speeds and in ways that no known technology can. The spike on the bridge wasn't just a zap, it was an EM pulse. It fried sensors. It was technological. The magnetometer spinning means a massive magnetic field. What if the Titanic is a hiding spot? What if something else is down there, something not from here, and it's using the massive metal wreck as a gas station, or as camouflage? What if it's harvesting the metal, the energy? The pale shape wasn't an animal, it was a drone. The tapping was a machine, and the spike was a warning shot, a piece of advanced technology telling the Odyssey to get lost. The thing is, we just don't know, and the people who do know, the ones who saw that footage, are not talking. We've been visiting the Titanic for decades, from Robert Ballard in 1985 to James Cameron's famous dives. We've been poking it, lighting it up, and landing our subs on its decks. The ocean is dark, deep, and we have no idea what's really down there. Was this creature the first, or is the Titanic just the beginning? Like this video and subscribe for more.